Just a quick disclaimer before this video begins. The purpose of this particular lesson is to dig deeper. So you may find it challenging, and if you don't get it right away, that's okay. If you are stuck on the tasks I give during the video, you can skip them, but I do expect everyone to do the workbook pages I assign at the end. Welcome back, Year 5. In today's math lesson, we'll be continuing our work with adding and subtracting decimals as we move into Lesson 7. We have two learning intentions today. The first is to understand the relationship between tenths, hundredths, and thousandths, so we're moving to another place beyond that decimal point. Our second intention is to add and subtract numbers with different numbers of digits after the decimal point. Let's start with our first learning intention by looking at what thousandths are. So, in this image, you can see that the yellow bar represents one whole. So you can imagine that that just represents the number 1. To break that down into tenths, you'd have to cut it into 10 equal pieces. Each of those pieces would be worth 1/10, or 0.1. To get to hundredths, you would take that same bar and then break it into 100 pieces. Another way to do that is to take the bar that was already split into tenths and break each part into another 10 pieces. So you're dividing it by 10 again. This time, each little piece is worth 1/100th because it takes 100 of them to make a whole. Another way to represent 1/100th is as 0.01. Now, to take it a step further, the next place after the decimal point is the thousandths place. And it's probably exactly what you would expect. Since it takes 10 tenths to make one whole, and it takes 100 hundredths to make one whole, it takes 1,000 thousandths to make one whole. So it's like taking that bar and splitting it into 1,000 equal pieces. Each little piece is worth 1/1000th, or 0.001. Now that we understand what thousandths are, and we reinforced our understanding of tenths and hundredths, let's take a look at this number line. As you can see, the big jumps are counting up in tenths: 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, or 0, 1/10, 2/10, 3/10. However, in between those big jumps, there are smaller jumps. If the big jumps are tenths, what are the smaller jumps in between if there are 10 of them? Or what does it take 10 of to make 1/10? Take a moment to think about that. Well, if we go back to our understanding of place value, we'll remember that it takes 10 hundredths to make 1/10. That means each little jump is adding 1/100th. Let's zoom in on a part of the number line and see how we could count up in hundredths. Alright, so now I'm focusing between 0.1 and 0.2, or 1/10 and 2/10. Now, if I'm going to count up in hundredths, it's not going to change the number of tenths that I have to begin with. So right after 1/10, if I add 100th onto that, I now have 1/10 and 100th. So it's going to look like this, 0.11. If I add another 100th, it's only going to change my hundredths place. So I'll end up with 0.12, 1/10 and 2/100ths. Then I'll have 1/10 and 3/100ths, or 0.13. Do you see a pattern? I hope so, because next is 0.14, then 0.15, 0.16, 0.17, 0.18, 0.19, and then I've reached 0.2. This pattern becomes even more interesting when you realize that our starting point, 0.1, was really like having 1/10 and 0/100ths. So it kind of looks like a 10. And then we've counted up from 10, 11, 12, all the way up to 19. And after 19, guess what? 20. 2/10 and 0/100ths. Now that you see that pattern, you probably realize it's quite simple, right? Well, guess what? We can zoom in even more. In between each hundredth are smaller numbers. Now think, what do I need 10 of to make 100th? Go back to that place value we were just doing a second ago. Tenths, hundredths, then thousandths. That's right. So in between each set of hundredths, in between 0.11 and 0.12 and so on, there's 10 more little numbers. Now, just like I did when I was identifying the hundredths, I'm going to do the same with the thousandths. I'm going to focus between 0.10 and 0.11. So you see my little red lines there. All right, well, 0.10 means I have 1/10 and 0 hundredths. And 0.11 means I have 1/10, 1/100th. So now I'm going to add thousandths into the mix. So all I need to do is stick my thousandths on the end. So I go from having 0.10 to having 0.101. I've added one little thousandth on the end. Then I'll have 0.102, 0.103. Do you see the pattern? Keep going. 0.104, 0.105, 0.106, 0.107, 0.108, 0.109, and then I'm at 0.11. To make that pattern show even more, I can look at 0.10 as 1/10, 0 hundredths, and 0 thousandths. So it almost looks like I'm looking at the number 100. And then I'm counting up 101, 102, 103, and so on. And then when I get to 0.11, if I stick a 0 in the thousandths place, it will look as if it's the number 110. Now what I want you to do in the comment section below is try to count up in thousandths from 0.14 to 0.15. Remember, 0.14 is 1/10, 4 hundredths, and 0 thousandths. So you just add 1 in the thousandths place each time until you get to 0.15. Now I wanted to show you what it would look like counting up using a place value chart instead of a number line. So I'm starting with the number 4.62, 4 ones, 6 tenths, and 2 hundredths. There are no thousandths in this number right now, so I could put a 0 in the thousandths place. If I wanted to count up in thousandths, all I would have to do is change my digit in the thousandths place. Just like if I was counting up in ones, all I'm doing is changing the ones place. So I would go from having 4.620 to having 4.621. Then I would have 4.622. Do you see a pattern? Yes, it's just going to keep going up in the thousands place. Then we'll have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then what happens? Can I put a 10 in the thousands place? No, I can never put a 10 in one place. So I know that once I have 10 thousandths, that's the same as having 1 hundredth. So I will carry that over to my hundredths place. So instead of having 2 hundredths, I now have 3 hundredths. And that resets my thousandths place to 0. Now, because decimals can take you some time to wrap your brain around, I want you to try practicing with these questions here. It says, for the questions below, write the next 7 numbers counting in thousandths. The first pattern goes 0.623, 0.624, 0.625. Now, it might go really smoothly at first, and then you might get stumped when you hit a 9. What I want you to do is try not to think of these as decimals. Imagine, just pretend it was a whole number. So if I was going to pretend the first set were whole numbers, I would look at it as 623, 624, 625, and then it's easy for me to keep counting. All I would have to do is just make sure I put my 0 in my decimal point. So go ahead, copy these into your book and write the next 7 numbers in each sequence. All right, I think I've rambled on long enough, and I don't want you all sitting in front of a screen for too long today. I know my last 2 videos were quite lengthy. So I'm going to dive into the independent work now. Today it comes from pages 24, 25, and 26 in your workbook. One of the questions I want to point out to you is a little bit tricky. It's on page 26 at the top. It's question number 7. I'm going to give you a little hint. To find what A is worth, you got to think in quarters. That's the only hint I'm going to give you. You got to figure it out after that. As always, if the challenge is too hard, you can skip it. It's not mandatory, but I do want you to do the reflection. When you're all done, take pictures of your work and send them to me. So far, you guys have been doing so well. I've been getting so many pictures of work. It's so hard for me to keep up with all of them, but it makes me so happy to see. Keep up the hard work, you guys. And as always, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.